For months, Taylor Swift's name hovered at the edges of the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni lawsuit, mentioned only in passing, quickly dismissed, carefully contained. When the lawsuit became public, Swift's team moved fast. A statement was released.
Clear, clean, firm.
The message was simple: Taylor Swift was not involved. She had no role. She was merely a supportive friend, distant from the legal conflict, uninformed about strategy, and peripheral to the dispute itself. It was a statement designed to close a door before anyone could knock on it. But courtrooms don't run on statements. They run on records. And when documents are unsealed, they don't care about optics. Because months after that statement, unsealed text messages surfaced. Messages that told a more complicated story. Not a criminal one. Not even necessarily a legally damaging one. But a human one. And that distinction matters, because while the law asks whether something is admissible, the public asks whether something is believable. The tension between Taylor Swift's public statement and her private texts is not about whether she broke the law. It's about whether the narrative she presented aligns with what she privately expressed before the lawsuit ever went public. And that gap is where this story lives. Let's start with the statement itself. When Blake Lively filed her lawsuit, the public reaction was immediate. Media scrutiny intensified. Names beyond the two principals began to circulate. And when Taylor Swift's involvement was hinted at, primarily through her proximity to Blake Lively, Swift's team issued a response that framed her as entirely removed from the conflict. The statement emphasized distance, neutrality, lack of involvement. It positioned Swift as someone who neither participated in nor influenced the events leading to the lawsuit. This framing served an obvious purpose. Taylor Swift is not just a celebrity, she is a brand. And brands survive on clarity. The statement was meant to stop speculation, not invite it. At the time it worked. But then the unsealed documents arrived. Among them were text messages exchanged between Swift and Lively months before the lawsuit was filed. These messages were not written with the expectation of public consumption. They were candid, emotionally charged, and reactive. And that's precisely why they matter, not as evidence of wrongdoing, but as evidence of mindset. In these texts, Taylor Swift does not appear disengaged. She does not appear neutral. She does not appear unaware. Instead, she appears emotionally invested. She offers opinions about Justin Baldoni. She speculates about his awareness of looming consequences. She reacts strongly to Blake Lively's experiences and frustrations. And at one point, she tells Lively, from Justin Baldoni's legal team's perspective, this is exactly why these texts matter. They aren't trying to prove Taylor Swift orchestrated anything. They're trying to show that the story presented publicly was simplified to the point of distortion. That the conflict was not isolated to two people, but discussed, processed, and emotionally supported within a wider circle before it ever reached the public. From Blake Lively's side, the texts demonstrate emotional support, not strategic coordination. A friend venting to a friend. A trusted confidant reacting strongly to perceived mistreatment. And that interpretation is entirely plausible. But plausibility does not erase contradiction. Because once a statement claims distance, every private expression of closeness becomes relevant. What makes this particularly impactful is Taylor Swift's cultural position. She is widely perceived as meticulous with her words, careful with her image, and deliberate in her public messaging. When someone like that releases a statement, audiences assume precision, intentionality, truthfulness. So when unsealed documents reveal a more emotionally involved private posture, it doesn't just feel like a discrepancy, it feels like a fracture. Not a scandal, not a crime, a fracture. And fractures are dangerous because they invite reinterpretation of everything that came before them. Viewers begin to ask, if this part was softened, what else was? If this involvement was minimized, what other dynamics were downplayed? And once those questions start, control of the narrative shifts. That's the real consequence of unsealed documents. They don't convict. They complicate. Taylor Swift may very well argue, and convincingly, that being emotionally supportive is not the same as being legally involved. That expressing frustration in private does not equal participation in a lawsuit. And legally, she would likely be correct. But the public doesn't think in legal definitions. The public thinks in coherence. And the coherence between, I was involved and I'll do anything for you is fragile. This is why this moment matters beyond celebrity gossip. It exposes the growing gap between public statements crafted for brand protection and private communications that reflect raw human reactions. In an era where texts can be unsealed, Nothing stays purely private forever. And every statement must now be written with the awareness that it may one day be read side by side with a message that contradicts its spirit, if not its letter. Taylor Swift didn't lose this case in court. She isn't even a party to it. But in the court of public perception, the unsealed texts shifted her from background figure to contextual player. Not a villain, not a mastermind, but not invisible either. And that's the uncomfortable middle ground that public figures fear the most. Because it's not about being wrong. It's about being seen. And once documents are unsealed, you don't get to choose how you're seen anymore. This is the Daily Sip.